Good Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Rocky Top Rewind BallQuest.com podcast, brought to you by our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Again, check them out at BlueH2O_climate on Twitter, and you can check them out online at BlueWaterClimateControl.com. Today, we're talking about the Hail Mary game. Tennessee's win over Georgia in 2016. Volunteers beat the Bulldogs 34-31. And a crazy game, one of the craziest games you've ever seen, not just because of the Hail Mary at the end, but the biggest thing in rewatching it is the fact Tennessee didn't get blown out of this game. I mean, they're down 17-0, and I mean, it looks like for all accounts and purposes, this might be 42-7. Tennessee gets beat. Instead, it ends up being the complete reversal of the hobnail boot game from 2001. We'll get to the Hail Mary and all that in just a bit. And Zach Azzanni, former Tennessee wide receiver coach, is going to join us to talk about that play and talk about the game itself with that receiving core. But in rewatching it, the first big takeaway I came away with was, how in the world did Tennessee not get blown out in this game?
It's Josh Dobbs. What happens at the end of the first half and that drive flipped the game. And this is the first one. I mean, I laughed about some of the stuff in the Florida ones where I had attended some tailgates and stuff as a kid, but wasn't at those games. I was at this game. It was the first one of these that we've done that I've been at this game and was on the sidelines. When the Hail Mary happened, this was the year I was at SEC Country, and just watching Dobbs, in person that season. Because it was when he'd really put it together, and he obviously had a lot of skill talent around him. But he did a lot on that drive at the end of the first half just by himself, and he just kept converting third downs with his legs. And, he gets in the end zone. Seems like he was going to be sacked multiple times on a couple of different plays, and his refusal to go down and that will kind of gave Tennessee some life, that at least they weren't down 3 scores heading into the second half.
It's almost like – go ahead, Rob.
I'm just saying, I've said it before multiple times, and this game just pounded home. In the moment, I didn't come close to appreciating Josh Dobbs as much as I should have. I mean, that his entire career in this game, like Jesse said, I mean, that's without him, and I mean that couple plays he makes it at the end of the first half. I mean, Tennessee's not in it, but as he was actually playing, I did not appreciate him nearly as much as I should have. And Butch Jones is awful. You go back and look at this. Josh Dobbs was great. Butch Jones is terrible. Those are my 2 biggest takeaways from this game.
And Kirby is clear. You can totally tell how much of a first-year head coach he is. Much like what we saw, kind of the evolution from Jeremy from year one into the decisions he's made, last season. Kirby's kind of all over the map in this game. He goes for it on fourth down in the second half, and the ball gets tipped or passed, whatever.
With Nick Chubb.
Yeah, and then Tennessee gets or Dobbs throws an interception on the very next possession, and he ends up punting from like Tennessee's 38 or 40-yard line. It was kind of the decision making for both head coaches was more than questionable. But yeah, Butch does not come off very well at all in this game, and in multiple of the decisions, both from the macro and micro sense.
Also, the athleticism after the game when he broke his ankle, basically. We all know what happened after this game. Tennessee, at this point, after this win, Tennessee's undefeated. They're 5-0. But I mean, you really look back. I mean, that first half of the season was like 6 seasons. I mean, you had the Thursday night game where Tennessee could have easily lost to Appalachian State. They fell behind, multiple scores at the Battle of Bristol and that circus where Jesse got thrown off the sidelines multiple times by Dustin Minot when he was working for SEC Country. Then he came over to VolQuest and he had me to back him. And then, then they have the big comeback from Florida. Then they come back in this game. They were a cat in that season, guys, and you just didn't know they used up all 9 lives in those first 5 games, because after that they just started dying slowly. A&M, Alabama, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. But
their play was fire. I mean, you just said it, that when you're down double-digit scores in 4 of the first 5 games of the season, eventually the thing's going to ignite.
And then somebody said, somebody told Butch Jones, there's no way you can beat Georgia and Florida and not play in the SEC championship game. And Butch said, hold my beer.
Well, I mean, the thing about this game, too, I mean, from a defensive standpoint, Tennessee got shoved around. I mean, this was a Georgia team coming in. All the Georgia fans were mad because they hadn't been able to run the football effectively. Okay.
And no, they're shoving this game.
Yeah, and so then there's Sam Pittman and Jim Chaney. They come out to open this game, and they're like, hey, we're just going to cram it right down your throat. And then they decided to throw the ball and do some of the crazy things that they did. But Tennessee couldn't stop the run at this point, particularly at that point in the season. They got shoved around everywhere in this game early in the game. And that's where you thought Tennessee was just going to get completely boat raced out of it. But then, as Jesse, you pointed out, Josh Dobbs, the drive at the end of the first half was obviously huge. Josh made a lot of good throws in his career. He made a lot of bad throws too. I mean, he was an erratic passer, which is why there probably wasn't a great appreciation for all of his playmaking ability because he missed a lot of open guys. He threw Josh Malone open in the Florida game and as good of a ball as you'll see him throw. The dart he threw to Jalen Hurd for the touchdown and to open the second half across his body on the rollout was an absolute. I mean, that's one where everybody goes, "Hey, all right." Those are the plays. I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, but that's that kind of play to make. It wasn't always there. But in this game, when they had to make a play, he made every play they needed to make for him.
And he threw
that Josh Smith throw was.
That's the one I was getting ready to say. That set up his scramble at the end of the first half.
Yep, that was a big time throw too. Here's the other thing too that jumps out to me, and I don't know, Jesse, and X's and O's you may know better, or Austin, anybody may have a better answer to this. It seems like this Kirby, Nick Saban, Jeremy Pruitt defense, if there's a kryptonite to it, it's if you have a running back who can catch the football. Because, Alvin Kamara's open on the swing pass seemingly all afternoon. Anytime they wanted to throw the swing, it seemed like they could get that open to them anytime. And then I go back to, Georgia against Alabama in the SEC championship game. I thought Chaney got away from that one year where I thought Swift was open in the flat the entire game. It seems like if there's a weakness there, that's one of the potential weaknesses that shows up because it seems like the running back in the flat has a lot of availability against this defense from time to time. Certainly did in this game because Kamara made several big plays in the passing game out in the flat, including one, I guess, right at the end of the first half that helped get him down there to where Dobbs could scramble and score, right?
Yeah, and then the one in the second half where he catches it, somehow stays in bounds and, rights himself and then takes off like he's shot out of a cannon. I mean, just one of those plays that makes you smack your head and say, Butch, what in the hell were you thinking? Why was this kid not touching the ball 20 times a game? I mean, just incredible.
The irony is he did lead the team in carries this game because Hurd, has the concussion or gets benched or whatever after
whatever happens. I mean, it's just good.
Whatever. There. To Hubbs' point, I mean, clearly I think some of the defenses that they're running with these pattern matching schemes leaves a guy in the backfield open. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, destroyed Alabama this year out of the backfield, both as a runner but also as a receiver. I think he had like 10 catches in that game. So this defense, the Saban, Kirby, Jeremy defense, they're all going to have – someone's always going to have some sort of little answer for them, and that does seem to be something that we've seen it give Tennessee problems, seen it give Georgia, Alabama, and what have you, that it seems that could be – I don't know if it's a kryptonite, but it may be the one weak link.
All right, let's fast forward here to the end of the game here. Tennessee gets the fumble recovery and gets the lead, gets the touchdown, and then – it looks like
coaching malpractice right there by Sam Pittman.
For having him throw it there?
No, I don't know about. No. It's not necessarily letting. If Chaney's going to have a freshman quarterback throw it, that's fine. But how you call a protection where you have a a tight end blocking Derek Barnett?
Yes.
I mean that seems like 101 that you don't do that. especially down by the goal line.
That was probably in the GA's evaluation on Sunday afternoon the week before, right? Don't you think he put a note says Isaac Nada can't block Derek Barnett, or whoever the tight end was?
It was Blazevich. Yeah, it was the other one. But still, either way, that was.
And if the next 2.5 minutes don't happen, that's one of the biggest plays that I would have remembered in Tennessee history. If Georgia goes 3 and out, Tennessee runs the clock out, Derek Barnett causing a fumble and Corey Vereen recovered in the end zone late in the fourth quarter
to seal a comeback.
Would have been one of the biggest plays ever. And instead, because of what transpires in the next 2.5 minutes, a lot of people don't even remember that happened.
Well, and so, obviously on third down, it was Tennessee's defensive kryptonite, for no matter who the defensive coordinator was during the Butch Jones era, they're going to get – somebody's going to get behind them at the end of the game, seemingly. Florida does it twice. Georgia does it here to seemingly win the game, and just an absolutely colossal mistake defensively.
Well, what's the common denominator there, though, Hubs?
What's that?
Willie was there the whole time.
That's true. Willie Martinez.
Willie was there the whole time. And I can tell you this, we've had some fun background conversations and whatnot. I've talked to Stoops, or Shoop. I said Stoops. Have talked to, Bob Shoop about that this season and this play. And clearly there was like a miscommunication going on from what some folks thought was supposed to happen and what ultimately transpired. You have Malik peeking in the backfield for some reason and then looking at the sidelines right before the play, and then Riley runs right past him. It's remarkable that Tennessee was able to recover from that.
And no program in the country has given up more plays like that late in games than Tennessee has. We had it in a review with the Arkansas game, 15 years earlier when Julian Battle gives up a 92-yard touchdown late in the fourth quarter to let Arkansas tie the game. Last year, Alontae Taylor gives up a play. Tennessee has a history of giving up these plays to let teams back in the ball game or to give them the lead or to tie the game. So Georgia gets the lead. Then they make the critical mistake of running out there without their helmet on. Get to 15.
AP, who was that?
Rico McGraw.
That's one of Jeremy's guys.
And he runs out. He's one of a couple.
I don't think he played another snap for Georgia after that, by the way.
He runs out. They run out without their helmet on. The Georgia commentators on the radio, if you haven't followed that or seen that replay on YouTube, they're all talking about the flag. They're like, who cares, whatever. Then Butch Jones comes up afterwards and says, we coach this scenario. Gary Danielson screaming on the television, like, why are they lined up in this formation to return the kick? And then Georgia decides to do the ill-fated pooch the same way Tennessee went middle squib, Rob, 20 years earlier and 18 years or whatever the number was at 0-1 in the Hobnail boot game.
15 years earlier.
And then Barry breaks a tackle, makes a guy miss, and gives him a chance to throw the Hail Mary. That whole 3 or 4 minutes there was just absolutely, crazy. And, by the way, Hurd was back on the field for that play on the return.
I just have one thing to say. What a turn of events.
It was one of those deals where, was it just Tennessee got lucky because Georgia pooched it and they got a fast guy back there catching it?
It was a perfect storm. So much crazy stuff happened. You didn't even mention the offsides, which gave them 5 more yards. Does Josh, Georgia was offsides on the kickoff in addition to having the, Rico make it off.
Well, and Zach will talk. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and Barry, correctly getting out of bounds. If he cuts 1 inch in a little bit more, the clock ultimately is going to run out.
I was watching. It's a great point because I was watching the 90 Disneyland Kickoff Classic between Colorado and Tennessee on YouTube. And Chuck Webb at the end of the game, he keeps running, whereas if he had just, gotten out of bounds or went down, they may have had a chance to get one more play off.
And Barry does a great job of recognizing I'm not going to be able to score or get any more yardage or whatever. And he just darts out, and it gives Tennessee a chance.
Well, and Zach Azzanni will talk about all this. He'll talk about the timeout that was called, where they switched receivers. Juwan was originally supposed to be on an island to the right. Z notices that, switches it, much to Rob's boy's chagrin. Who did not want the timeout and was mad about calling the timeout, Butch Jones. And so Z talks about all this, coming up here in just a couple of minutes.
Well, and then, obviously Dobbs throws a perfect pass.
He did. It threw a great ball.
I mean, he threw it up high enough to give a guy a chance to make a play, and Lorenzo Carter looked like he had never been back there to even – they might have put him back there in practice, but they clearly never practiced it at any kind of speed because he has no idea how to play the ball back there at all.
He's like boxing out his own teammates.
Yeah, and so Tennessee pulls off the miracle of miracles and looks like they're on their way to the SEC championship game, which, as Rob noted, did not happen. But at that point, Tennessee leaves Athens, Georgia, 5-0, ranked in the top 10. Tennessee's back. Butch Jones has got Tennessee where they're supposed to be, but it's in large part because of a couple of – and it's always this case, NFL players making, huge plays. Barnett and then Josh Dobbs, playing, I think, maybe the best game of his career in this game. He was good at A&M. Kamara was great at A&M. I don't know that Dobbs played much better than he played in this game, personally. He made plays in the second half against Florida. Okay, it was really good in the second half. But, I mean, you go back and look in the first half of the Georgia game and this game, he was not playing poorly. I mean, Hurd cost him a touchdown. He was pretty locked in. This is as well for 4 quarters as I think he played against a quality opponent. You guys may differ with me. But
I completely agree.
Well, and motivated against his home state school.
Yeah, and he was clearly motivated because he showed more emotion in this game than he showed in other games as well.
And AP – I'm sorry. I just want, before we get out, we've not had a Paul Fortenberry shout out in a long time. It brought a smile to my face to see Preston Williams catch a ball this game after Paul Fortenberry questioned whether he would ever walk again.
He's the only amputee playing in the NFL. I mean, kid tore his ACL, and Paul acted like his career is over. I'm like, Paul, you do know modern medicine, man. This is not 1970.
Azzani's going to talk about that post-game celebration too, I bet.
Well, he talks about it all. And then, of course, between Rob, throwing shade at Butch, and then my shade at Butch in the Azzanni interview for passing up on Azzanni for Larry Scott, it makes for quite a fun podcast.
Well, so we've got plenty of gasoline on that fire that's long passed and moved on. But this was an unbelievable. This is one of those games where everybody's going to remember where they were. There's more Tennessee fans attended that game than really attended that game for sure, and it was it was just really unique to see Tennessee on that side of it because they had been on for a decade, they had been on the wrong side of those things. 13 men on the field against LSU, Hail Marys that Florida completed for touchdowns to win games. Tennessee had seemingly found every way to lose a game like this, not find a way to win it. And thanks to Josh Dobbs and Juwan Jennings, who played the ball perfectly in the air, Tennessee finds a way to win it in a game that you're always going to remember and fans are always going to talk about. Hey, in East Tennessee, you need a reliable heating and air system designed for your home and our climate. You need a team that's trained to the highest of standards. You need solutions, not sales pitches. There's many heating and air companies in Tennessee, but there's one that's going to send you out not a salesperson, but a repair person, an expert who's going to tell you what you need. That's Blue Water Climate Control, veteran-owned, family-operated. If you have an air conditioning issue or a heating issue, they're going to send an expert out to your home. They're going to lay out all the options that includes repairing the system you have, replacing the system with one that's affordable, upgrading your energy efficiency, improving your indoor air quality, and options for financing, which includes same as cash and even rent-to-own. Call them today at 865-299-2290 or visit BlueWaterClimateControl.com to make an appointment. Blue Water is an authorized dealer for American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. For Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Jesse Simonton, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for listening to this Rocky Top Rewind podcast. Coming up next, former Tennessee wide receiver coach Zach Azzanni talks about the Hail Mary, talks about the win over to Georgia, and plenty more. That's coming up next on the Rocky Top Rewind.
Welcome back to the Blue Water Climate Control, VolQuest.com Rocky Top Rewind podcast, looking back at the 2016 Georgia win. Now joined by an assistant coach on that team, one of the key coaches on that team, now in his fourth season, or will be his fourth season this fall in the NFL, Zach Azzanni. Z, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Austin. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. So looking back at that game in Athens, what do you remember leading up to that game? Tennessee had, of course, played the Thursday night opener. They had played the Battle of Bristol. You had the big win against Florida. It had kind of been like this range of emotions those first handful of games. Going into that game against Georgia, you know, what was the mood? What was everybody thinking?
Well, I feel like at that time we were hitting our stride. If I remember correctly, we were undefeated at the time.
Correct.
We were ranked in the country. I can't remember exactly where. It was, pretty high for where we had been in the past. So we kind of felt like everything was coming together. We were getting back, hitting our stride. You know, we've been grinding, trying to get the roster back the way we wanted, trying to get the program back the way we wanted, where everyone wanted on top, and kind of felt like we were right there at that point. And going into Athens to play Georgia is something that is not easy. And we felt like if we could get that one, we were real that year. And I can remember – and I'm trying to remember the year, Austin. I guess we came up just short in Athens. So it must have been not 15, but maybe 14.
14.
Where we came up short. And I can remember we were just everything was, we felt like we were turning the corner, and we were just so close in all these games. And I can remember losing that game. And I can remember guys crying. I was crying in the locker room. I had tears. And I remember talking to my players after that game in the Georgia locker room on how I was so tired of losing and coming up just that short, and watching those guys celebrate on that field, and knowing that all that we had put in the off season and then the season, and then you come up that short on a big game that you almost had, and fast forward 2 years later and the emotions were completely flipped. So we just felt like if we could get that one, we were a real contender in the SEC.
So you go back to that game, you get, Jalen gets a concussion, going in, gets the big hit, is kind of showboating going in. The offense kind of was, hit and miss in that game. You get the late strip sack touchdown with Corey Vereen, Derek Barnett, that kind of, flips the script. And then here comes Georgia right back down the field. And we've talked about it in the podcast at this point. Eason, hits the touchdown. What are you thinking when that play happens?
Oh man, I was just
here. We go again.
Yeah, you're just thinking this is not. You remember how we had lost some previous games the couple years prior. Go back to Florida in the swamp. They throw a curl route to Antonio Callaway, and he's running down the sideline when we should have had that game. And it's like happening in slow motion. You cannot believe what you're watching. And when he threw that dime, I'll never forget, it was cover two. Our corner kind of sloughed off a little bit, and he ropes that thing in there. And I'm like, it was like the ball. It took 10 minutes to come down. It was just, is this happening right now? Because we thought we had it, and that was a great defense we were playing that year too. They're all good, but that defense was exceptionally well. But I can remember, I think it was going in at halftime too, we marched down, and we were right there, and we took like 3 or 4 shots at the end zone until finally Dobbs scrambled, dove on the pylon on the left side. Every inch was just so hard to come by. And then to watch them just throw a rope for whatever it was, 60 yards, I'm like, what? So my heart dropped for sure. But it's easy to lose faith at those moments. But I did feel like, that year we were one of the best to ever play on offense at the University of Tennessee. And so you always felt like we got Alvin, we got Josh, We got these guys in the perimeter. We felt like, hey, we still got a shot at this if we just, stay the course, even though there was minimal time left.
Unlike the following year where Butch chose wrong, passed you over for the OC job, and ended up at 6 points a game. It's okay. I'll throw the shade. So, Z, when you Rico McGraw comes on the field, they get the celebration penalty, and so it gives you 15 more yards. And then they're kicking to Evan Berry, who is pretty good at that particular phase of the game. So he gets you back into position. At that point, you could have attempted a super long field goal, but they decided not to do that. And in retrospect, it ends up being the right call. I think it was the right call anyway.
Right.
But, when you huddle up there before the Hail Mary, what's the mood like? Is there a calm? Is there a nervousness? Is there, what's that like?
Yeah. Well, to go back to the return, that was and I played a lot of football since that day, but correct me if I'm wrong, Austin, but he dipped out of bounds, right? Like
yes.
he was watching the clock. I remember watching him. He knew exactly. Evan knew exactly what he was doing. He was taking it, and then he got as much as he can and tried to save us some time and dip out of bounds, which was a really heads-up play by him, rather than try and get everything and be the hero and get tackled, we lose the game, right? So there was a lot of discussion on when he gets the kickoff, do we have him run up, take a knee, and then Hail Mary from there just to make sure we had time? But Evan, stretched it out as far as he could to give us that. I mean, he doesn't do that on top of the celebration penalty. You're not throwing the ball in the end zone, right? So now fast forward to that moment. I've been in a lot of those moments, and it's deafening loud. You can watch them scramble. You can see them getting their last play victory defense on the field. They put Lorenzo, whatever his name was.
Yeah, Lorenzo Carter.
Yeah, Lorenzo Carter, all those guys back there. So they're getting all their stuff straight. And so are we. And it's one of those things where I carry, to this day, I do it here all the time, a receiver coach's biggest nightmare is end of the game, end of the half stuff, because they're plays that you do. Sometimes you don't practice them every week. Sometimes they're from training camp. Sometimes they're every 3 weeks, whatever. So I learned a long time ago to always carry, those plays with me. So when I'm anticipating those situations, even though the guys might not want to hear it, right? Hey, we might have to have a Hail Mary. We might have to do the pitch back, whatever it is. You got it there and they can see it. But the way that we had practiced it that year, I was in charge of all of our end of the game plays. Ironically, I am here too, that we had formationed it in such that we could call it pretty quick if we didn't have a timeout and just run out there and execute it. Your fear, though, sometimes is, when you're executing those plays, that you don't always have the same guys that you practice them with, because they always happen at the end of a game. So one of your stars could be out. One of this guy could be out. So you have to be able just to run out there and execute it no matter who is where. So it's going nuts, right? We go ahead and call the play. And it's Hail Mary left. Okay, Big Ben. Can't remember what we call it. Big Ben, Hail Mary left. And we didn't have a formation call. We just called it left because we knew guys were going to position themselves. But we also had, correct me if I'm wrong, 1 or 2 timeouts. But we had a timeout. And so we get out there, we break the huddle off the sideline, run out there, and I see them line up. And I see Lorenzo, and I see my man Juwan Jennings, who we all know what Juwan did that year as far as how he played. And he's on the backside. He's a single-side receiver. Well, number one, he was playing on one leg, so he wasn't real fast that year. But as you well know, you throw it anywhere near him, the guy's going to come down with the ball. Like if you're going to put your mortgage on a guy that's going to catch the ball in the air, put it on Juwan Jennings, right? Well, here I got Juwan backside. I got Josh Malone as the jumper front side with Jason Kroom and Josh Smith. I got guys where they're supposed to be as if we would practice on a Thursday, but my gut told me it wasn't right. I just didn't feel like we had the guys in the right positions to be successful. We had one shot at it. So I start yelling at Butch, call a timeout, call a timeout. And of course, Butch is looking at me like, what are you talking about? I mean, he's like, what? He's yelling at me. I'm like, just trust me. Call a timeout. We have it. Use it. So he's like, he looks at me like with this death stare, like, you better be right. So we call it. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's looking at me. Why'd you make me do that? I said, just trust me, coach. Just trust me. Bring him over. So we bring him over. And I said, Josh, you're faster. You get on the backside. You haul ass across the field to triangle the football. Juwan, you go and you're the jumper. And Juwan looks at me. He's like, thank you, coach. He looks right at me. Thank you. And I'm like, oh boy, we could win this game. Like, he's one of those guys, you look at him when he says he's going to do it. I mean, it's 99% sure he's going to find a way to get it done. And we snapped the ball. The protection was good. Alvin makes a great block to give Josh a second, which is huge. Not a lot of people know that. And he puts just the right amount of arc on it. Josh was good at that. Right amount of arc to give guys time to get down there. And usually when you get pressed, we switch guys. And that's exactly what happened. We got a guy knocked off. I can't remember if it was Kroom, whatever. When they do that, they automatically have to switch responsibilities. And they did. And Juwan went up in the air. It's one of the greatest pictures in Tennessee history. You see like 18 hands with red wristbands and stuff, and then Juwan. And my wife, when I told her I was doing this tonight, she said, hey, isn't that cool poster? We had some fan that made us a really cool Josh Dobbs poster celebrating afterwards with Juwan catching it like a dual photo, and it said the Dobnail boot on it. And it was pretty special. And then from there, all hell broke loose, but it was a pretty special game, man. It was one that, it's one that I see probably retweeted by Tennessee fans, that last part, every, month or so, at least I see it on Twitter still, which is neat to be a part of that.
Oh, you got the Titanic music underneath that they put on Twitter. You got, you got all the different calls, the Georgia play-by-play guy, of course, Bob,
Yeah.
and of course, Vern and the CBS call. The better question is, if you called timeout, why did you call timeout when he tried to hire Larry Scott and say, whoa? I'm just playing.
Trouble.
I will take that path another time. So after the game, what's that mood? Is it a state of disbelief in the locker room? Because, Hail Marys happen every now and again. Aaron Rodgers has completed probably more than just about anybody. But it just is such a rarity, to really almost have two Hail Marys, even though Georgia's wasn't. It was more just a busting protection by Malik Foreman, or I think it was Malik Foreman, it was somebody.
Yeah.
And then, just a nice throw by Eason. But this was more of a, total coin flip type thing.
Yeah. And then you fast forward, I'm now coaching Tyree Cleveland, who beat Tennessee on a Hail Mary in the swamp. He caught one down the sideline. So it's weird how all these things come together. But, I've been a big believer my whole career, Austin, on those last end of the game, end of the half type plays that I think they're undercoached. I think that they're kind of a checklist for a lot of staffs and a lot of coaches. And I've just believed throughout the years, my guys sometimes don't like to hear it at the beginning, but those Thursday walkthroughs, when we're doing those, I'm a big time stickler on the spacing and on who's where. And because I just believe as long as there's seconds on the clock, there's still time to win a game. And every play matters, every detail matters. And I believed it before then, and I had never won on a Hail Mary, but I had seen them done. I go back to Michigan State, like just little throughout the last 10 years, really cool Hail Mary plays and then ones that don't work. So you watch a lot that don't work, and guys are all over the place. And you can just tell it was a second thought by either their staff or their players or whatever the case may be. So that was a learning lesson, and also confirmation on when you do things right and you just keep hammering it and you don't compromise, that once in a while, and it takes some luck on top of it, that something good's going to happen. But to give you, the feeling after that, like of disbelief or what, I think there was, I can't believe what I just saw. And I think it wasn't just the Hail Mary. It was them coming back and ripping the touchdown pass, right? And then us getting, and then 15-yard penalty, then Evan catching it, dipping out. Like the whole thing had to match up perfectly.
Yeah.
And those games, so those Saturdays or Sundays when they do rarely match up perfectly in a sequence of events, it's almost like, did that just happen? I mean, it's you can't even believe it until you get on the bus with your little takeout bag of food and you have a chance to sit down and take a deep breath and you're like, wow. I mean, it's just kind of exhausting. But, I was hugging Juwan afterwards hard. He was hugging me. Thank you, Coach. Thank you for believing in me. And it's one of those things where it's like, thank you for, telling me you were going to do it. I mean, it's a neat feeling. I can remember, they were standing around the field like in disbelief, and we had some players running, like talking trash to them, and they're talking trash back. And it was just, you couldn't even control it. It was just, it was going chaos, right? Alvin's laying on the ground. Butch is like on his knee. Like the whole thing was wild,
That was when Butch broke his ankle, basically.
Right. Yeah. But when you asked me to do this, I was thinking about that game 2 years prior. I can remember crying, and I can remember Josh Dobbs coming up to me and putting his hand on you. And he goes, Coach, that's why I love you. You care so much about winning these games. Like, I can see it. We're going to make sure we have a good feeling, and we're going to work and have a good feeling and get this program back on top. And you fast forward to 2 years later, we're undefeated, and we go beat Georgia at Georgia with a Hail Mary from Josh Dobbs. And, those are special moments, man. That's why you coach. You just remember bits of time like that make it special. And I love when Tennessee people retweet it. Just like you said, I love it. Going on vacation, the SEC Network always plays classic games in July, and I'm watching it. And I just need to be a part of that forever. No matter what happened at Tennessee, no matter, we didn't win the whole thing and didn't, this or that or whatever, it doesn't matter. You can always say I was a part of that, which is pretty neat.
Well, there you go, Vol fans. The man that made it all happen with a quick timeout and adjustment in the formation. Z, we appreciate the time, and good luck this year in Denver. You got some new wide receivers out there to throw to, so that makes your life a little more fun.
I got some new toys, man. It was shaped up well for us draft-wise. It fell in our lap, and I'm excited. Sometimes it's not always the best players; it's the right players. This time, I feel like I got both. So I got good kids, good players. So now I just got to get out of their way and not screw them up and coach them up wrong, right?
That's right, and good luck this fall. For Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, Jesse Samton, and Zach Azani, I'm Austin Price. This has been the Rocky Top Rewind podcast. Look back at the 2016 Georgia victory.